Mr. Chairman. I would like to address a couple of points in the call-in. To the point about realistically evaluating all alternatives and considering the views of the public, and whether the council has acted for a proper purpose and in the interests of the public. But just before I do so, I'd like to commend both Councillor Davidson and Councillor Fower for bringing this case before the committee, because it is an issue of massive public concern, and I'm actually aware that the reason that they brought it before the committee is because of the number of members of the public who have contacted them. Now, I've also been talking to people regarding this decision, and the typical response I've got from people when I briefly explain what's happening has been, they can't possibly do that. That is crazy. Now, I appreciate that something being crazy is not a reason for calling it in, but I think it is germane to the point about whether the council has acted for a proper purpose and in the interests of the public. Because in order to act for a proper purpose, the council must show that it's acted in a way that a reasonable council would have acted in those circumstances. And it's also got to show that it's acting in the interests of all the public as far as it can. Now, there's quite a lot that's, I would certainly contend that if you have a situation, and this is fairly crude, but I think it describes what's happening here, you've got an area of housing. In order to achieve what they're doing here, they're turfing people out of that housing in order to put other people in who are homeless. So you're actually putting some homeless people in and making other people homeless in the circumstances. Now, I would contend, and I put this to members of the committee, no reasonable person would consider that is what a reasonable council would actually do if it's acting in the interest of the public. Now, I'm sure Councillor Seaton is going to come before you and show you how it's in the financial interest of the council, because it's going to save money. And I don't blame the actual officers for bringing this forward, because officers of this council have been asked to save over £20 million, and they're under great pressure to come up with a whole variety of schemes in order to make those savings. But I would suggest to you that this particular scheme is a scheme too far, and it's something that should not be happening. Now, it's actually referred to in the report that, you know, we didn't have any alternative, because if Peterborough doesn't engage with Stephen Phillips and put some of our homeless people in, then they might go to London Borough of Camden or London Borough of Havering or anyone else who can put people in. So that they were basically saying it's going to happen. Can I suggest to you an alternative scenario, that Peterborough City Council has a responsibility, as it says here, to behave for a proper purpose and in the interests of the public. If we are seen to be condoning this sort of action, aren't we opening the door to a whole range of other companies coming in saying Peterborough City Council is an easy touch? We can actually come in and purchase some housing, and we can then hire it out to Peterborough City Council to put some more homeless people in. So I think, you know, you can argue both ways, but I think, is this the way that a reasonable council ought to be acting? In terms of realistically considering all the alternatives, I've been reading through the report, and I've read the Cabinet's response, which I think was published at 4:30 today, and I don't see anywhere in there what alternatives were thought about. It says an alternative was not to engage with Stephen Phillips. Well, okay, that is an alternative. It says an alternative was to, in the longer term, build more housing. Well, that's what they say is going to happen anyway. But wasn't a further alternative that they could have explored? You know, Councillor Davidson has mentioned some of the financial alternatives that could have been looked at. Did they look at other private sector housing and providers to actually see whether there was any housing that was available that didn't involve this process of turfing people out onto the streets? And if they come back and say, no, there isn't any housing in Peterborough that's suitable, then I would say, well, you know, we are the third fastest growing city in the country. You go down to Cardiff, you go to the Paston Reserve development, there's loads and loads of housing being constructed. So if they are genuinely saying that there is none of that housing that is suitable for these people, I think what you've got there is something else this committee should be looking at, a major failing in housing policy, because I think what it shows is we've got policies that say we should be building affordable housing, but is that actually happening? So I think on those two grounds, I think that's more than sufficient to ask the committee to call in this decision.